welcome to Dojo Live this Thursday, October 3rd, 2024. My name is Kim Lantis, and it's my pleasure to be hosting today. Co-hosting alongside me is Sridhar Padmanabhan.
Hey Kim, thanks for having me.
Hi, good to see you again, Sridhar. It's been a while.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's all right. It's all right. Shridar's a busy man. And another busy man, and of course, the guest of the hour is Tim Flors, who is the Chief Customer Officer at Groups360. Tim, thank you so much for being on Dojo Live.
No, Kim, Sridhar, thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
For sure, for sure. It's going to be a super fun conversation. I'm gearing up to laugh because if our pre-show conversations are any indicator, Tim's a pretty fun guy. And Tim, we're excited because we're going to be talking all about revolutionizing group travel. We're kicking off today the first part of what is going to be a 3-part series as we dive into Groups360's vision for the future. Today in particular, we're going to be focusing on how technology is simplifying group travel and event planning while driving better results. And it's two-sided for both the organizers and the suppliers. But before we dive into that, I would like to get to know your background a little bit, Tim, kind of what drew you to the hospitality industry, more specifically group travel, and kind of the path that led you to being the Chief Customer Officer at Groups360, please.
No, awesome. Again, thank you, Kim. Thank you, Sridhar. Listen, group travel and just travel in general is something I've been passionate about since a very young age. I think when most people meet me, they're like, okay, this guy's a people person. So obviously my career path was going to lead me to hospitality in some form or fashion, hotels, theme parks, airlines, you name it. I was going to end up in one. Mm-hmm. Ended up jumping on the hotel train and been in the hotels ever since I had the opportunity. So everywhere from starting actually to the Disney College program way back in the day, doing my first front desk job there, where my goal and my big award there was having the longest front desk check-in experience ever.
And then, we'll save that for another show.
Exactly. No, and then taking that all the way down and essentially working in hotels from anywhere from smaller focus service hotels to mid-scale properties, all the way to large convention resorts like Gaylord. And then most recently, prior to me joining Groups360 10 years ago, was with Marriott International after the acquisition of Gaylord. So essentially during that time was doing groups and managing groups the entire process, right? Whether it was smaller Smurf groups in my smaller focus service hotels or larger corporate and association groups and more that mid-size and corporate groups or convention style hotels.
Mm-hmm. All right. So you definitely have a lot of that insight on the operational side of what it takes to, and the headaches maybe that are experienced on both sides of that coin that leads into what Groups360 is looking to solve. So let's talk just about you as a company, Groups360. What sets you apart from other group booking methods?
Yeah, I mean, first off, as an organization, we all are made of former hoteliers who began the company 10 years ago. And back to what you just said, us having the knowledge of kind of the pain point, not only what the hotel was experiencing, but also what the planner was experiencing, made us really well suited to actually develop a technology that can serve both sides of the marketplace. And hence why this series is 3 parts, right? This is about us as an organization. And we really want to dive deeper into how we solve for hotels and how our solution really helps solve for planners, right? Because if you only solve for one, you don't really solve for the entire problem that's been happening in the group space. Mm-hmm. So what sets us apart is our mindset. And what sets us apart is actually some of our unique functionality that we have with some of our larger brand partners. And so our tool is essentially an RFP tool that can reach 225,000 properties globally from an RFP standpoint. But of that, we also have a tool that can actually allow you to instant book 24/7, 365. A good portion of those hotels, about 25,000 of those properties that can be instant booked for rooms, space, catering, equipment, completely online, something that's never been able to be done before, especially in a multi-branded setting.
Wow. The catering piece and the equipment piece is surprising to me because a lot of times in my ignorance, I think travel and I'm like, okay, you got to get there and you have to have a room to stay in. But of course, when we're talking about events and meetings and groups in particular, there's so much more to it. So let's talk about that then, how group travel has evolved over time. So you've been around for 10 years. What was happening before that as well? Can you speak to some of the changes you've observed over the last decade and maybe in different segments? Because also when I think group travel, what comes to my mind mostly is either going to be conventions, business, maybe team building weeks, which is super fun, relatively new-ish thing, weddings. But what's changed and what's happening?
Now, it's interesting, right? And so a lot kind of changed post-COVID for a lot of different reasons, but you can see from a corporate standpoint, a lot of teams went very remote, and the meetings that were much larger, big annual meeting with my entire team, a lot of folks turned into smaller regional meetings. And so we've seen that quite a bit in the corporate side, that the meetings are just naturally getting smaller. They may still have the large annual meeting, but now they're just meeting more frequently as smaller groups because we don't come to the office every single day. Yep. So we see that quite a bit in the corporate space. It's funny, for the sports and wedding segment, that's been really interesting to watch and kind of see how those groups have really reacted to having a more seamless online tool available, both from the RFP as well as on the instant booking side. And so from the weddings and sports side, you have to think most of them are smaller groups, right? I'm the soccer mom, soccer dad. I'm going to book my sports team. I'm the bride or groom trying to book my wedding. And what ends up happening is I send a lead out to a hotel and I'm super small. And what ends up happening, I don't get responded to. And so I'm small as a former hotel salesperson. Small group comes over. Great. I'm going to go ahead and push you to the side. I've got bigger fish to fry. I'm going to focus on the larger meetings and events. I might get you in a week or so, but that might not help that person who's literally doing this on nights and weekends.
Yeah.
And so really with the onset of our instant booking technology that's available 24/7, 365, it allows this individual who oftentimes, has a normal full-time job to do this on nights and weekends where they don't have to wait for a salesperson in normal 9-to-5 environment, that they can go on and book, which is great for them as the consumer, but also great for the hotel, right? You don't convert any leads you don't respond to. And now you've just given your consumer an opportunity to book 24/7, 365. And that's really what we've learned from the weddings and sports segment, that they were looking and needed a solution like this because they were just so ill represented. Again, it's really valuable for the hotels, right? It's often weekend business, things like that, Friday to Sunday arrival. So that's what we really saw in that segment.
Those small fish that we're now frying. We'll stick with the metaphor. I mean, it might be easy to ignore, but what does that add up to? Like, what are we talking about in terms of potential new revenue, or revenue that was kind of being ignored previously? Does it really add up?
Oh, it's hundreds of millions of dollars of leads that are just from just wedding and sports alone that happen.
Wow. Shadar, so after what you're hearing and also given your background, what's going on in your brain as you listen to Tim?
Many questions, Tim, but I'll just start with one. So I'm just thinking that, hey, as you're making this technology available, obviously you're working with the big chains and you need access to their inventory. They need to make their inventory available to you. There's a lot of complexity around that. On the other side, as everybody is talking about getting engaged with potential customers earlier in the buying journey and during selling ancillaries, all of these new things that are coming up. I don't want to answer all of the questions, but there's technology complexity on one side. They're constantly changing what they're doing with their booking engines and various things. On the other side, you want to provide an upfront, left shift the engagement and also probably get engaged more during their stay with you. So some of these things, if you could touch on, that's enough. I just wanted just an initial teaser kind of a question.
No, absolutely. So again, with the hotelier hat on, the biggest thing here, you don't lose that upsell opportunity at all, right? And so like I mentioned, in the online tool, I do want to mention one thing. When we talk about online booking, we're not accessing like standard GDS rates and things like that from a connectivity standpoint that you had mentioned. We're doing live API calls to group rates, group inventory, group pricing when it gets to catering equipment, things like that. And so you're essentially, if you call the hotel directly, we're tied into the same revenue system that hotel is seeing. And so very different from other entities who might claim to have group booking.
Yeah.
We have that direct connectivity directly into either their CRS, their sales and catering system, or both to offer that group inventory.
That's amazing.
Because of that, it allows obviously a hands-off approach, right? Because it's fully integrated, right? We change as a hotelier, I change what a cup or a gallon of coffee costs. I don't have to update the Groups360 portal. It's happening automatically.
Right. Oh, that's
But with
fantastic.
that, I'm now back to the planner. I'm booking a small meeting space and a small meeting for 15 people. I book, hey, I just want to have hamburgers delivered for lunch. All great. Hotel receives this information. The hotel then has the opportunity, obviously, to call me, and that's kind of their SOP for a lot of these hoteliers, that they're going to call me within 24 to 48 hours of the instant booking. So whether it's a sales individual or for larger hotels that have convention services and the catering managers, they'll call that user and say, Tim, that's great. You booked the hamburger. Well, wouldn't filet sound really good to you? Like, wouldn't that be great? And so they have the option to add those different upsell opportunities, right? And really talk to them about how their group can become a success at their property.
Fascinating.
That is fascinating. I'm curious because you're talking direct booking as literal as that could possibly be. And it makes me think, in 2019, if I'm not mistaken, you at Groups360 received, I believe, around 50 million combined investment coming from companies like Accor, Hilton, IHG, Marriott. So this leans, I think, into what that investment means and their willingness to just open up and let you in for this current maybe demand for innovation in group travel. Like, what's happening from that perspective that really shifted and made what you're doing possible?
Yeah. Again, the investment was great. Obviously, it was a great strategic investment. It was the major chains that are globally deployed saying group pricing and group inventory and group is meaningful to us as an organization. And essentially, because of their partnership, we now have a way to access that live inventory from their systems, right? Making it more efficient for their hotels, their franchisees, and even from non-investor brands, right? So Wyndham and Choice and Omni also have live inventory, or Choice will be soon, but up and live on Group Sync today. And so, but that investment essentially was the commitment saying, we want to be able to do this collaboratively in a multi-branded environment, knowing that a lot of consumers, even though they may be loyal to a particular brand, they still oftentimes, because of their own internal procurement process, have to look at multiple brands, right? Have to look at, hey, I may be hugely Marriott loyal, but I got to look at some other brands as well. Group Sync allows them to do that, to have that holistic approach, while also still confirming and booking at your preferred brand.
Wow, that's fantastic. And I wanted to get a little granular here. You mentioned something as simple as the price of a gallon of coffee. So what does this look like? And I know we'll probably dive into this. We'll dive into this in the next episode. But how detailed can I get on Groups360? Or, I mean, what does this mean for me? Like, let's talk about, business travel here. Going back to like team building week and maybe the need for tons of wireless and Wi-Fi and connectivity and ports and, getting this conference room set up for the IT side. Like, can I do this as simple as just making sense of it on a screen without having to pick up my phone and have these conversations and hoping that somebody answers? And like, how granular can we get?
That's right. It all depends on the brand or chain about how granular it can be. But for those hotels who offer space bookings, oftentimes you can get to the point where I'm doing my coffee, AM breaks, PM breaks, lunches, dinners, can confirm, can actually pick my time of when I want that to be delivered to the room, can pick the number of attendees that I want it to be served for. Because again, my guest rooms may be 15 rooms, but I got 40 people actually going to be at the meeting because we have a local crowd that's coming in. So I've got a lot of options and controls as the meeting planner. I also may not be comfortable booking that online. You know what? My boss, my CEO, she told me, hey, I want to book this meeting and event. Great. But maybe I'm not comfortable booking the catering equipment. I can literally book rooms, book the room, and say, even though I have the option to do it, skip, and I'm going to do it like it normally happens today, work with the hotel directly and confirm those items. So we want to leave flexibility for the planner because we know there's change management involved on both sides, right? This has never been able to be offered before. And so as a hotelier, I've been limited. Like group to me is something that's special, right? You got to call me to get access to it, right? So that's why most of our hotel partners have started with 10 to 25 rooms on peak. We have some hotels that are going up to 50 rooms on peak. But as a planner, I've never had the option to do this, right? And so we literally had a customer reach out to us, booked a smaller meeting and event, loved it, executed at the event, hotel did a great job. Planner came back to the platform and said, amazing, I have a 250 room group. Let's go ahead and book. They called us and said, there's only an option to RFP. Your system is broken. I want to do a direct booking. The capability is not there yet for a 250 room group at that property. But it's going to take time for folks to adapt to this more online world. When literally back when I'm my hotel days, you were faxing it, you were using an online RFP tool, right? There wasn't the way to instant book. And so it's not a light switch, it's a dimmer switch for that product adoption, really for both the planner as well as for the hotel side.
Fascinating. Sridhar, like what's coming to your mind?
So I think, Tim, just picking up on what you just said, when you have planners who are so used to picking up the phone or sending an email and expecting a fairly engaged conversation with somebody on their group booking needs, to moving to something that's tech-enabled. So do you see that the people who used to do it analog are moving to digital, or do you have like a whole new customer base coming in on digital?
Yeah. Oh, great question. It's interesting, right? And we have certain segments who are quicker to adopt, honestly. And Smurf was the first actually early adopters that we saw, not only on our channel, but also on some of our private label partners that said, hey, I'm that sports group, I'm that wedding group, I'm going to do book online. When we get into the corporate groups is where we've seen a lot of significant growth from last year to this year, because those are the folks who typically were doing the more analog version before.
Right.
We've seen growth of about 108% from last year to this year in just corporate bookings alone, because it all comes down to that corporate booking. And my advice to planners who are listening and watching today is try it. If you have a smaller group, my recommendation is to try it, because what we've heard from our planner customers is that I was nervous at first because I was used to doing this process for 20, for 25, 30 years. And somebody moved my cheese. But all of a sudden they realized, oh gosh, this is simple. This is easy. This is really convenient for me. And it's saving me significant amounts of time that I, as a meeting planner, can spend much greater time on the larger, more complex events than I do on this event. And so we have seen that adaptation over time. But again, my recommendation to the group is try it the first time. It's the hardest part to make that first step. But we have seen that those folks who have instant booked once are very often our repeat customers after that.
Yeah. In terms of change management that you mentioned, are you able to go in as an organizer and make changes before, like, oops, you know what, I don't want the coffee service at 10, I'd rather have it at 11, or can we do that through the platform, or is that still having to be dealt with directly?
Funny. So the answer today, it will be very different than the answer I give you probably in 12 months from now.
Okay.
Is after it's booked and confirmed, you would manage that through the hotel. Okay. That likely would be something we'll be able to manage in-app for kind of smaller adjustments and changes.
All right. So that is kind of in the pipeline. I love it. And I alluded to this a bit earlier, that this is the first conversation of 3. So we're going to be diving deeper into how your platform, specifically called Groups Sync, is benefiting the suppliers and the event planners in these upcoming episodes. But maybe can you give us just a little more of a sneak peek about what these conversations might involve, and just a bit more into how, again, you're impacting efficiency, decision-making, and on both sides?
No, absolutely. So let's start with the supplier side. And so that's our next one in 2 weeks from today. Yep. We'll be talking with the hotel side of how kind of instant booking and just a more efficient, even effortless group RFP tool really helps streamline the process for them. And I think that one of the biggest things you're going to hear is that we're learning collectively. We're listening to customers. And so this is all really new to customers. And so we are essentially on a continual listening tour and just hearing from customers their feedback of, why are you instant booking? What's making it easier and simpler? So those customers who are slower to adapt are saying, why aren't you doing it? And so what I can tell you is that we've not had, is this right? I don't think we've had a brand partner that hasn't updated their online terms and conditions yet. Every single customer, every single brand has said, okay, got it. We're going to make our terms more flexible so it makes booking online easy instead of, hey, I've got this really tight attrition clause and things like that. So again, for those folks who are on the fence of, am I ready to do this quite yet? Please know that our brand partners have worked incredibly hard with their teams and their hotels to provide incredibly flexible terms that you can feel comfortable booking online at any point in time. On the planner side, what we're going to talk about in, what would that be, in 4 weeks from now, is how it's helped them save time and money. And the biggest thing is going to be time for them. Because a lot of our larger corporate organizations that utilize us today, it's not just they do one small meeting every month. They're doing multiple smaller different meetings throughout every single week. And so by utilizing our tool, it has empowered them to do this in a more streamlined way. And again, have more time on their plate to manage different, again, planning smaller meetings and events is one thing of the 100 different things a meeting and event planner has to manage, right? Like you mentioned, Kim, it's, even though we're talking about smaller meetings, doesn't mean they're simple meetings. Oftentimes a smaller meeting with a bunch of executives going to it is just as complex and stressful than it is a 1,000-person convention that's going. And so we're mindful of that. We understand that. And you'll hear from some of our planners that this part has actually streamlined that process significantly so they can focus on those other details.
And then, I mean, it's even exciting. I know we're focusing on supplier and planner, but I'm interested in knowing if there's been any guest satisfaction, right, that we've seen increasing, which I guess directly is going to be impacting the supplier side, well, both. But what are people, the actual people who are in it, feeling? If there's, maybe we don't know, other than, this event was really smooth. And
I think the goal of any event planner, if they were to, like, we're going to ask them in 4 weeks, that's their goal, right? You don't want your attendees to know how it was booked, when it was booked, how stressful it was to plan, that when they show up, they leave, they're like, that was valuable content. That was the greatest meeting. That was seamless. That's their goal. And so we want to make it a seamless guest experience. And so I know we haven't talked about this quite yet. We've talked about, the RFP capability of GroupSync. We've talked about the instant booking capability of GroupSync. We also do have what we call an attendee experience, traditionally called housing tool, to essentially empower that meeting planner to have a better guest experience with that attendee, right? We want to make that attendee a guest, and we want to be able to give them a guest reservation website so they can feel that they could make the reservation, come in early, stay later, for all those different types of things to help not only that planner, but to your point, Kim, making that attendee experience start off on the right foot.
Ooh, so this is the, hey, we're having a team building week in Cancun. Wouldn't it be nice to bring my husband at the tail end of this? And I can easily make that happen.
That's right.
Like,
have it in one single reservation, right? Where in a lot of different applications today, right? I'm forced to book my room for group and book my room for transient. Here, we do that in one seamless transaction that essentially everything's billed appropriately. Whatever is master billed on your event days goes to the corporation. Whatever is after that goes to the individual. So allowing the more leisure stay.
Both the guest and the planner going, ooh.
Exactly right.
Instead of the 10,000 email exchanges of, can I change my date to this instead of that? I absolutely love it. Yeah, we've done this before.
Tim, I have a sidebar question if you have time. So I think, Tim, this is probably a question you haven't really thought of before, but since you're here and listening to you talk, I'm thinking for some of the big brands at a ballpark level, how much of their business, either in terms of dollars or room nights, is group business? And what are they trying to do to reduce friction in getting that group business? Because listening to you, clearly there is friction in multiple different ways, how people go about it, different segments within the group. So, how much does it matter? Because, I mean, my booking at Marriott, they'll take it or leave it. They don't know when I'm going to travel. And I pick Marriott because I go there. But in terms of groups, what are they doing to get more group?
Yeah, I think from the question of what percentage of their business is group, it all varies by the size of hotel, the market of the hotel. But we know some hotels that could have group, a group transient mix of, 40% group.
Wow.
But definitely there's hotels that are about 80% group, right? So it really all depends.
Amazing.
And how they're tackling it, honestly, one of them is with us, and we're very thankful for that and for their partnership of trying to reduce that friction for the customer. And another part they're doing, a lot of the major brand partners have done a great job of having deployment from their global sales teams to an individual customer, right? Letting that customer know that that brand and chain value that individual's business, regardless of how they want to book, whether it's completely online or whether it's using an RFP tool or calling the hotel directly, that they have that. And so I think the hotels have done a really great job on the sales side of things of deploying to certain customers that drive a lot of volume to their brand and chain.
Is it easier for them to sometimes say, hey, I understand all the questions you're asking. It might be easier for you to go to Group360, and I'm just wondering if that happens. Probably does, right?
I mean, I want that to happen daily, Sridhar. No, but I know we have our group sync technology. We also power some .coms as well for the brands. And so if you go to Hilton.com, Wyndham.com, IHG.com for the group side, that's our technology that's powering it. So if I'm that global salesperson, and if I know you just want to look at Hilton properties, that's where you're exactly right. I can point you to this, and I can still do all the things I had mentioned on my own branded site.
Nice.
If not, if you're saying, hey, again, back to that corporation who has to look at multiple different brands and chains, hey, here's Groups360 and Group Sync. Go ahead and log in to source your event.
I love
Fantastic.
it. I know your heart is in hospitality, your co-founders and everyone's heart is in the hospitality side. But are you looking to the transportation side in the future as well? Like how we can get groups to where they want to go together?
That is something we're talking about. Not near to roadmap from a group travel standpoint of like, hey, let's get a bus together to travel from destination 1 to 2. But when we talk about that attendee experience, if that's what we're going to be focused on next, right? Is I know where you're going. So we just booked a group. We're going to Orlando for our event. Tell me where you're coming in from. I know your dates. And hey, maybe we could look at airlines. We could look at cars for you as an attendee level to make that a more seamless experience.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Kind of the continuation of helping give some of that control.
That's right.
Okay. So we've got 50 people coming in from 25 different cities, but I get to pick my airline, my seat, my time of day, and what else?
Exactly.
I love it. It's very smart. Much more efficient than what I had going on in my brain, to be sure. We're coming to the final few minutes of today's show, and I wanted to mention that you and Groups360, well, I don't know about you specifically, Tim, will you be there? But Groups360 will be at IMEX in Las Vegas very soon, October 8th through the 10th. What can attendees expect when they visit you there? And if they're not attending, how might they drum up a conversation with you?
Absolutely. So for those who are going to IMEX, we are at booth F441 over at IMEX. We're essentially right near the Hilton booth. Okay. And what you'd expect from us is a lot that we've talked about today. We'll put some pictures to it. We'll put some reality and some concrete evidence about how this all happens, right? It's great. We've talked about this for about 30 minutes or so. We'd love to show you what we do. And for those who aren't going, there's always a way to get access to it and talk with us. So if you go to groupsync.com or groups360.com, either way, hit sign up. You can get instant access to Groups360 today. And if you have any questions with it, please reach out to us at support@groups360.com. Our sales team would be happy to do an individual demo for you and walk you through not only our sourcing and booking technology, but also through our housing technology as well.
I love it. I love it. Well, safe travel to you and your team as you get there. Have an amazing time at IMEX. And of course, I'll be talking with you, Sridhar, more than likely as well on October 17th, right here in Dojo Live, 10 o'clock a.m. Pacific, for part 2. That is let's try this again. Revolutionizing group travel, unlocking new revenue streams. And this is going to be focused on from automation to instant booking, what tools are transforming the group travel experience for suppliers. And of course, I'd like to remind our audience between now and then, we've got a full week next week as well. We're going to be kicking it off Tuesday with Custodio Barreros. He is of EIP management, and that's going to be a really cool conversation about cultural nuances and new markets, specifically for hotels. So catch that also at 10 o'clock a.m. Pacific. Sridhar, thank you as always. And Tim, it has been a pleasure meeting you today, and I look forward to more conversations.
Absolutely. Kim Sridhar, thank you guys so much.
Great meeting you, Tim.